do we ever really think about what is the best of the best skills to have in things that you're going to implement? What is the LeBron James of information management? And then what is the Brian Scalabrine level? It is January the 2nd, 2024, and joined today by Davey Slimmon, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. We got snow yesterday. You guys did not. So
none. We have green grass on January 2nd. We had a green Christmas. My kids got a kind of tether ball. If you know what a tether ball is, a pole with a tennis ball attached to a string. My son wanted one of these for some reason, and they were out tether balling on New Year's Day. It was without their winter coats on. It was frightening and weird, but they had a great time.
That is unusual, but good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we're going to start off the year by trading some stories in the information management realm. Today, I've got a couple of games and metaphors to run through that we'll explore. I know, Davey, you've brought some topics as well.
Yeah.
For those unfamiliar, we have a background. Davey and I both work at a company called Shiny Docs Corporation, where we hope that you buy a lot of software from us. It's designed specifically to understand what information that you have, wherever that information is. It's not too expensive and it's not too difficult to deploy. Davey being our VP of Customer Success, myself being the CEO. And Davey, how is Shiny Docs Pro going?
It's going great. So we obviously have a number of customers deployed and enjoying the simplicity of getting it going. I think it's a space. Information management broadly is a space that in the past has been complex and confusing for people. And what I really love about what we're doing right now is that we've really kind of introduced, I think, a very straightforward, simple, easy to deploy solution to the market. And it's going great.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, Davey. So we'll jump right in. I'm going to introduce my first topic, and it's this is related actually to just a video that's making its way around on the YouTubes. It's just a video that's making its way around on the YouTubes. There's a quote from this guy, Brian Scalabrine, and Brian Scalabrine is known in a very loving and affectionate sense as the worst NBA player. Not that he's a bad player. He just statistically, he was never he didn't score a lot.
Right.
And a high schooler tried to take him on, said that I bet you the best high schooler could take on the worst NBA player. And of course, there's a video of this. It's not even close. And during the session, Brian Scalabrine said to the young man, I'm closer to LeBron than you are to me. So, and it got me thinking about skill level capabilities, these types of things when it comes to information management. And I'm just wondering, do we ever really think about what is the best of the best skills to have in things that you're going to implement? What is the LeBron James of information management? And then what is the Brian Scalabrine level, which clearly is going to be south of that? And is the average, implementation, is the average work that people do with it south of Brian Scalabrine? Is it pro level or is it high school level? The average information management implementation that we do, and do people even think about what the pinnacle looks like?
Well, there are three different things wrapped up in there. There's the LeBron James. There's do you say Brian Scalabrine? Brian Scalabrine, and then whether or not, and mapping that.
Yes,
if you map information management over top of it, what you were proposing here reminds me of of an expression that I'm sure you've heard before and that many have heard before that really, as I get older, has landed well with me, which is, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Obviously we all want to be the LeBron James of information management, but I'm here to propose that Brian Scalabrine, the Brian Scalabrine is a perfectly
Scalabrini, yes.
wonderful way to be, and you could be a completely serviceable information management operation at Brian Scalabrine levels of excellence. Now, well, I'll jump ahead and say that I think a lot of folks actually don't get to that level. I think they maybe have the best of intentions. I think they want to, or in some cases, need to get to that level of professional information management, just like Brian was a professional NBA basketball player. But the pieces that they're missing on their journey prevent them from getting there. And some of those are maybe internal to the people that are involved in doing that. And some of them may be completely external, that there are forces outside of them that prevent them to getting to that point of basic professional competence with information management, like the Brian Scalabrine versus the LeBron. But I'm saying this from the perspective, which is similar to your own, which is that we've observed together, you and I, combined decades of organizations trying to do this. And I'll go a step further to say there's nothing wrong with having an aspirational goal of being the LeBron James of information management. But to get to the LeBron James of information management, you have to pass by the perfectly acceptable Brian Scalabrine level of information management, and I would argue that that's a completely attainable thing, but it does take focus, it does take work. And to your example of the average Joe thinking that they're going to be as good as the worst NBA player ever, no, you're not. You're really not going to be as good as the worst NBA player ever because you haven't put in the time and the focus and the energy and all the other things that need to go into it.
Yeah, I like where you ended up there because the thing
Yeah.
that I ask is what are the best doing? And then what are the,
Right.
the not best pros doing versus what the average person is doing? And it starts off with how you measure it. Like obviously the points that you put up, the number of block shots, however you want to measure success
Yeah.
it should be measurable. So I think that's maybe the point that you first want to write down in an information management program, an information management practice, and even your own professional skills is
Hmm.
what does LeBron do and have
Right.
that the other pros don't have? And what does Brian Scalabrine
You
have
and you and I,
that
let's just call it,
the non pros have?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, it's like I
Right.
mean, yeah, it's this the high school kid
Right. Right.
would crush me the way Brian crushed him. So that's easy. Uh, so in I think maybe one of the points that I want to make too is quite often
Right.
when we talk to people, they're so mired in the project that they're doing right now, the task that's assigned to them, or the fire that they're trying to put out.
Right.
When you ask them these questions, they almost don't even want to deal with it. They don't have the answers. They don't know. And I feel like that's, in the little bit of free time that you might want to carve out for yourself for professional development, this might be an area of focus is what's the top pros doing?
Yeah,
What's the bottom
well,
pros
the
doing? And where are
measurement
we compared to
aspect
that?
alone is the greatest place to start because then you can, whether you want to tie this into atomic habits or not, you know, you start to track the things that you can break down to their smallest units of work or their smallest activities and decide whether those are things that you are even, capable of. I would argue that in the case of NBA level basketball, myself coming in at 5'8" on a great day probably has a couple strikes against him before I even step on the court, right? But that's a basic measurement. Like, what are some of the basic measurements of elite basketball players? What are the basic measurements of a world class, world beating information management program? And those should be absolutely things that can be itemized and written down. If you're going to be, especially if you're going to be, a power forward or something like that, what are the qualities that you're gonna have And some of those are going to be things that you can't control. And that was sort of jumping back to one of my earlier points is, in the enterprise world, when you're talking about, a large scale information management program, there are going to be aspects that are absolutely within your control, but there are going to be some that aren't, right? There are going to be externalities that you can't completely control. There are going to be commercial and budgetary elements that may not, on the surface, be in your control. And you got to figure out, okay, what are the great qualities of highly successful information management programs, and do we have any of those boxes checked right off the bat? And if we don't, what can we do to get those boxes checked? If it's budget, if it's executive buy-in, if it's the right team, if it's the right skills, if it's all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So yeah, that's a great way to begin. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So measures. Okay, we'll think about that. And then as we segue
yeah.
into topic
Well,
number
I'll
two
I'll go
for
I'll go
today,
even better. Like I
Davey,
think it's
what is
fantastic
your
that
first
so
topic?
we didn't discuss this ahead of time, but I think I'll go a little bit further to say I'll tie my first topic of the day into the one you just raised because it's completely, in my view, connected. You and I, in the past, I know at least once, have talked about Gall's law. And for people that don't know what Gall's law is, you can look it up. But it's this idea that if you have an enormous complex system that works, it has evolved from a smaller, simpler system that worked. There are no complex systems in the world, whether they're information management systems or any other major system that you've got. There are no complex systems in the world that didn't evolve from a smaller, simpler system that worked. You can have a complex system that didn't evolve from a simpler system, but it probably won't work. And so, to me, this ties directly into your example of the worst NBA player and the arguably one of the greatest NBA players that there's been in LeBron James, where it is, in my view, completely appropriate and sufficient when you're going on your information management journey to begin simply, to begin not with the hardest possible thing that you can do, not with the most complicated system that you can conceive of in your brain or some really complex information management structure or records management structure that you could possibly conceive of, but rather to start as simply as possible. And then, if you want or need to build in layers of complexity, you do that only when the simple versions are already working. And what I would add to that to say is that in a lot of cases, you go with what the requirements of the business are, right? You go with what the needs of the business are. You don't deliberately go out to design the most complicated thing that you possibly can in the world just because you want to design something complicated. You want to go out and design something that meets the needs of the business. And if that's super simple, great, you're done. Move on to the next thing. So that's my second topic, Gall's law. No complex systems that work. All complex systems that work evolve from simpler systems that work.
I've got a couple initial reactions as we talk about this. First initial reaction is I'm going to use the word agile, and please don't anybody get too
Right.
fussed over what agile means, whether it's Kanban or whatever. I'm just talking about the idea of continuously delivering something that works must be part of that evolution. Because quite often, as scientists, we're far too happy to sit back and hyper design every little system and say, I'm going to make this piece perfect. I'm going to make that piece perfect. And at some point, like the board or the CEO or the president or
Right.
whatever is going to say, can you just show me something that
Right.
works? And don't show me your config file and your file plan or whatever. I don't care about that. I want to see my people. I want to see my staff getting stuff done faster, higher, better. I want to see us passing audits cheaper. because of the work that we're doing. It's not, I don't care what the
Right.
config file looks like. I don't care what the file plan looks like. I just want to see the outcome. So marrying the idea of, yeah, you need to hyper focus on the specific attainable early things that you can do, but it also has to intersect with, I need to show some success associated with it. I need to show how it aligns with the business in that, which is, to me, that's the most important skill. That's the best place you could be as an information management professional, is the idea that you have simultaneously the ability in the back office to actually get stuff done and design a credible program that works, while simultaneously showing the front office, hey, here's something of value that is based
Yeah,
upon
you
this
know,
work that we did back there.
maybe this is anecdotal, but I feel a little comforted by what I what I'm seeing and reading and hearing from our customers and in the field and the like, that over the past 5 years, maybe, and of course the world has gone through quite a lot of change in the last 5 years. There is a little bit more of an acceptance of the idea that not everything that you do has to be the biggest, most enormous thing in the world, and the most complicated thing in the world, but that rather, just like, the equivalent of, small ball, if you know a baseball term, singles, 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 run, singles, 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 run. Not every single IM or IT project needs to be this behemoth grand slam home run where hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of people are involved. You can have great success by building small projects that work, and then you do the next one, and then you do the next one, and then you do the next one. And I think the world that we live in now and the climate that we're in the world of work, I think that all plays into this. And I'm here for it. I think it's a great way to go, because in a lot of ways tying it back to your comment about agile, you're constantly proving and reproving your point. You're constantly testing. Did that work? No. Okay, it didn't. Okay, that's fine. We didn't spend 18 months doing the wrong thing. We spent a short amount of time. We learned from it. And now we came back and we've got something that works in a really rapid in rapid succession, right? So that's what's exciting to me about it. Whereas, when you and I started in this business, certainly when I started in this business, that would have been unheard of. It's like, no, every project that you do is going to be this behemoth, and it's going to go on forever, and it's going to take millions of dollars to do all this stuff. And I'm kind of glad that seems to be going away. Maybe that's just, as I say, maybe that's anecdotal.
Yeah, it's, well, when I think back to a big project that we did, it was
Right,
mergers and
right,
acquisition portals for, I'm not going to mention the customer, but they were a delightful customer to have. But they started off with
right,
a 1,200 page specification
right. Sure.
for something that has never been built before. And it was, like, I mean, ultimately we steered them towards
Yep.
more of an agile approach, and it worked in that type of thing. However, it didn't end up looking or feeling or working at all like the specification. So, but for some reason, people love, it's like, well, show me what I'm going to get,
Yeah.
and which works for engineering. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's,
Right.
you don't agile build a bridge. You build the bridge to the specification, because we've built millions of bridges over the course of the last several hundred years. We know exactly how that works. It's just, it is a commodity piece of infrastructure. But most businesses, when it comes to information, when it comes to the fuel for your business, the stuff that people know how to do, is not a commodity.
Yep.
This is a hot topic. This is important information that you need to make sure that more people have access to. So yeah, you do need to continuously test. You do need to continuously modify how people are getting access to it. You modify to verify that it's actually
Yeah.
serving the purpose that
Well,
you want.
and into the middle of the whole
It's
thing is
interesting.
the pace of change. Like, you know, how can you honestly approach an information management challenge of a large scale organization with a project plan that's over multiple years, when you don't really have a crystal ball and you don't build into the system a mechanism for dealing with unexpected change or changes in the changes in the organization, changes in the economic climate, changes all over the place that can ultimately divert the path of the project. You have to have something built into it to allow you to pivot and adjust. And when we look at information management projects specifically, that's where they historically would really get themselves into trouble. You define this enormous taxonomy or classification scheme. In the world of records management, you'd create this giant file plan and plan for retention and disposition, and they work great if the organization never changes at all. So long as so long as this organization never changes at all,
Yeah.
these are terrific. But what organizations today are like that? Zero. I mean, they don't stick around long if they don't change much, right? So
Well, yeah, it's you have to it has to build in a sense where you are continuously
hmm
evolving. That's the first part of any plan. And
right. Oh
secondly
my
is
gosh.
that there's continuous turnover of people. People don't want to learn your
Yeah.
system or how things work, and they're not going to do work for you. And that to me has been one of the biggest challenges in the history of managing documents,
Yep.
files, media records is that people are going to do whatever the hell they
Yeah.
want, and you can't force them to do anything. And whether it's under fear of fines or under fear of other things. Like, no, my job is to get that oil out of that sand. My job is to build this widget. My job is to
Right.
defend this customer. My job is to draft this contract.
Right.
It's not to do your document thing. So get out of my way. And quite often, boards and CEOs say, yeah, get out of his way or her way because
Yeah.
she's the one who's making all the revenue for this company. So get out of the way. So that's the real trick is, yeah, it's like it's in a real life environment where nobody's buying into what you're doing. How do you make something
Yeah.
achievable that is continuously evolving? Like
Yeah,
it almost sounds like an
I
intractable
know that
problem.
it can feel that way. I mean, and I'll add more intractability to it by saying, the scale of the problem is also way beyond the point where human beings can reasonably deal with it. I would argue that we were long, long, long past that. Email, the advent of email, which was 30 years ago or 40 years ago, depending on when you start counting, that alone really marked the beginning of the end of human beings being able to stay on top of these things, and that it's taken us so long as a discipline or as a group of people that are interested in these topics, that it's taken us so long to accept that users are going, they're like water going around a mountain or around an obstacle. They are not going to pause for a moment as they're going about their day and their lives to think about, geez, I really hope I can do all of the things that I need to do to get the information management components of this properly done, or the records management components, or what have you. They're going to go about their business because, as you say, they're focused on selling a widget or getting something out of the ground, or whatever their job is, not information management. And so, as a result, the environment or the climate that you need to create is one that accepts that and even embraces that and says, we know that users are going to just users going to user, they're going to do whatever they want to do, and that's cool because we have the systems and processes underneath behind the scenes, like almost like antivirus software, right? You've got antivirus software and malware software running in the background. I know that I do. How much time do I spend in a day thinking about my antivirus software and malware software? Zero. It's happening in the background. It mostly works. Sometimes it needs a little tweaking, but somebody else looks after that. And we need the IM stuff to work in essentially the same way. It needs to be a background process that is run everywhere for all content, all data, so that the users can just go about their day doing their job. And in the background, those components are taken care of, particularly ones associated with regulation, compliance, audit, blah 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 blah. So, yeah,
So you start with the simple with the background, and then it
yeah,
can evolve into the complex system rather than trying
Yeah, I
to
mean,
hit the
it's a
complex
yeah. It to
system
me, look,
directly. I
this
like
is a
it.
definite side session, but I think ego comes into it for people. I think we all fancy ourselves smart people, and we want to do fancy smart things and be seen to be doing fancy smart things. And I think that's where that's where the poison pill is. That's where the temptation is. I'm gonna show everybody out there and my bosses and the people at the conferences that I go to. I'm going to show everybody how smart I am by designing the biggest, most complicated system ever, and then everybody will really realize, wow, what a smart guy. I think that's the trap that we fall into. I want to meet the guy at the conference who says, yeah, we did this thing. It was super quick, super easy. It's not that complicated, but it basically works. I want to be that guy. I'm still not that guy. I'm working my way towards becoming that guy. Yeah.
That's cool.
Okay.
Well, that flows into my next topic
Yeah.
really well. In that, so chess. You're
Yeah.
familiar with the game? Probably dabble. Every one of us at some point has said, "I'm going to do the chess," and then you quickly realize that, geez, there's no good place to start.
Right.
Opening, mid games, end games, memorization, studying strategies, and it's an intractable problem too for humans, just the same way that information management is. Because I'm going to make up something here, but I think I've heard this before, that there's more possible games of chess than there are atoms in the known universe. It's just a lot. When
Right.
you got 8 by 8 with all the different combinations of
Wow.
how things can move, there's a lot of possible games of chess.
Hmm.
It's intractable for humans,
Especially big computers.
but not for
Right.
computers,
Yeah.
especially big computers. And I think about this with respect to information management as well. It's one of the things that we say to people all the time. Like, rather than worrying about where your documents and content is,
Hmm.
we want to worry about what it is, because computers are pretty damn good at pattern recognition and identifying
Yeah.
what the content is, and we don't start there for some reason. So the topic that I'm going to
Hmm.
introduce is what's called the endgame table base. If you've never heard of the endgame table base before, so you can download it's or buy a strategies for chess. Did you know that it is a solved game when there's 7 pieces or left? It's 7 pieces or less left on the game on the board. So you've played your
Yeah.
game a little bit, and we're down between us to the last
At
seven
that point.
pieces. There's no such thing as an original game. You can actually download the perfect
Cool.
strategy for every
Wow.
situation, and I think it's like 23 terabytes or something like that. It's probably smaller. I forget exactly the thing, but you can literally,
Right.
it is a completely solved problem. And this is one of the things where the chess masters are saying this is why we can never beat computers, is because they play a very good opening, they play a very good mid game, and by the time they get to the end game, they just
Right.
look in the tables and say, "Oh, we're playing this end game now, and you're
Yeah.
gonna, if I can beat
Yeah.
you, I will play exactly the right way of beating you."
Hmm.
So it's not intractable. But I think the point that I want to make is that quite
Right.
often people hide behind the intractability
Right.
of something and say, "Wow, there's way too much data. Why should I even bother starting there or whatever?" When I think my point was,
Hmm.
it is obviously the right spot to start. It is, what information do you have? How does it relate to your business? Before you decide, am I going to put it here? Am I going to put it there? Am I going to try to train somebody on this or that system? You got to ask, what do I have? Because
Yeah.
computers are pretty damn good at
Yeah.
figuring out what you
Well.
got.
I was laughing the whole time you were talking about the solved end game, because I recently taught my son how to play chess and the basics of the rules and that kind of thing. And in very, very short order, obviously he grasped all the basic concepts of how things move, but in very short order, we're at the point where, like, he's playing good games of chess. And the reason why I raise that specifically is that I think there is obviously that leap that we're talking about, that even Kasparov and the greatest chess players that have ever lived can't can't get to the same level as a supercomputer, or even, quite frankly, this laptop that I'm talking to you on, can't get to the point where where we are as good at knowing like with certainty how to finish off these games, or even how to execute a kind of a perfect set of moves that will result in the outcome that you want, which is the victory of chess. And we are now, I think what you're getting at, and you can tell me whether I'm on track or not, we are now at a point where some of the same thinking can be applied to knowable, solvable things in information management, particularly the one thing that almost everybody skips, which is the inventory. What have you got? Like really enormous organizations, and you and I have seen this again and again. As recently as this past year, it's interesting that we're talking at the start of a new calendar year. But as recently as 2023, we've worked with all kinds of organizations that think they know what they've got in house, and in a lot of cases they're on track. They mostly know what they've got, but there are always just so many surprises, and so how can you even begin to make great decisions until you have that basic understanding or inventory of what you've got? And that's why I think it's a great place for everyone to start, because the quality of choices, the quality of decisions that you're going to make is going to go up, I don't say exponentially, it's going to go up quite a lot uh, based on whether or not you know what you're dealing with, as opposed to guessing or ignoring. I'd say ignoring is probably the more common trait, where people say, "Well, there's a group of people in this warehouse, and we don't know what they're doing, but we'll get to that later." With the tools and technology that are available to us today, you don't have to wait. You can send technology into every corner of your organization and have a really great sense of the inventory of what everybody has got. And for so I'm a bit of a roll here, but for organizations that are very acquisitive, big M&A activity, large organizations that have acquired through osmosis, or, through the course of history, they've acquired a lot of other companies. They're the perfect candidate for this type of thing, where you've brought in this new group, they've joined you, you want to make them part of the team, but you don't know anything about what they've got. And what a great approach to take, to say, well, we can help understand what everybody's got by just doing some very basic stuff, right? So yeah,
Yeah, it's the idea of
yeah,
certainty. Like the thing I liked about the end game table base is that if I know the position and I know the pieces, I look
yeah,
in the table, here's the certain win. And
right,
when I look at it,
right,
like finding personally identifiable
yeah,
information in your content, why aren't you doing that? That's a certainty. We can find that with a very high degree of certainty. Finding every duplicate, that's a no
yeah,
brainer. Why don't you do that across email and file shares and SharePoint and other systems? Why don't you find trivial files or obsolete
yeah,
information? That's
right,
like that's your end game table space. That's your baseline. So when somebody comes to you and says, "I got to get rid of this," or "I got to find everything that might get me in trouble for that,"
yeah.
then it's like, "All right, I just look up in the table. I already got that. Okay, here it is." Rather than trying to search and collaborate and find,
100%. And I
it's a
think
solved
that
problem.
for people who haven't seen that in action, I think it still seems like magic. But and to us, there's still a little bit of a magic to it, because there's a lot of work and thinking that has gone into this. But there's also an element of standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I mean, the idea that you know um, we can tell you everything about all of your data, no matter where it lives, sounds super fantastical, but it's not, when we break it down and talk about how this is possible, and how, at least at a very basic level, you should be able to quickly interrogate your own data no matter where it lives. It's a very basic idea. And I think for folks who've just sort of maybe been in a little bit of a, in the movies when people are kind of frozen in time, if you've been a little bit frozen in time, and you've been thinking for years that, no, the only way you can really know what you've got is to have human beings opening every Word document and deciding what's in that Word document or opening every PDF file and deciding, well, that should be categorized with this tag or this metadata. We're way beyond and way past that because the tools available to us allow us to do that without human beings really being that involved at all. And then you being able to quickly interrogate that whenever you feel like it, rather than, I think, some organizations may be kind of, give me all the personal information about Davey Slimmon. Some organizations would be completely paralyzed by that question because they wouldn't know where to start. But the technology have evolved to such a point where you can say, "Yeah, I've got that. What is 5 minutes from now? Okay, give me 5 minutes. I'll pull that together and I'll find every occurrence of every occurrence of Davey Slimmon that you've got in your organization, and you can use that information for whatever your business need is, right? So, yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I
In
love it.
game table
Yeah, I love
base
it.
for your
Um, you
information.
know,
That's it.
to me, one of the things that I did have another bullet. If you got time for another bullet, because I think it's tied to it's
Yeah,
tied to
for sure.
something
We get time. Yes.
that is that we've been talking about here. We're at a point where we can really rapidly do things that used to take either you couldn't do them or people perceived that you couldn't do them, or the only way that they really happened were with these giant projects, as we talked about, these multi-year mega projects that you know big IM projects that are going to take forever and lots of time and lots of people's resources. And we're at a point now where a lot of those things can be done a lot faster, a lot quicker, and with fewer people involved in them. And so, what I wanted to raise as a topic is the value of that, right? How do in the old days, and going like Industrial Revolution old days, the value of something was tied to how long, sometimes tied to how long it took to make the thing. It obviously includes the parts that go into it and the materials that go into making it. If you buy a pair of leather shoes in 1935, some of what you're paying for is the leather and the wood for your heels or what the cork or whatever else is going into the laces, and then some of it is you're paying for the time of the cobbler to make you a pair of nice patent leather shoes. What we're talking about here, it's funny because like all these same models drifted into IT and drifted into tech. Well, you're gonna pay for how long it takes to do something and the materials that went into solving your problem, and which I guess kind of made a kind of sense, 20 or 30 years ago. But I would argue that some of the things that we're talking about in this session here kind of flip that on its head. Because what we're saying is, with a lot less time and a lot less people, you can have these great outcomes and these great, valuable results. But we did it faster and with fewer people. Should it cost more? Should it cost less? Should it cost the same? You know, how do people prize the what's your time worth to you?
Well, this raises an interesting question because I had a
Right.
conversation with a friend of mine who's an analyst the other day, and he wasn't really coaching me per se to say, well, people spend a ton of
Right.
money for what you're talking about, so you should charge way more. It's not exactly what he was saying, but he was kind of alluding at why do it less expensive than
Mm-hmm.
what the most people are willing to pay. And this is there's some transition
Right.
that happens for all technology. Like it's when you figure military always they're a couple 20 years ahead of everybody else when it comes to everything from
Right.
computer vision, radar, and these types of things because they're happy to spend the tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars on something
Sure.
that eventually becomes a commodity like this. So that's fine. They'll go do that, but then eventually it gets commoditized. So at some point, there's a tipping point where
Mm-hmm.
something should become
Right.
accessible to everybody else. Some amazing technology that would have cost tens of millions of dollars to have thousands of people go off and do manually should just become something that fits in your pocket, costs $600 and plus $50 a month for unlimited whatever. Uh, and
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of bravery too, I think, and it's self-congratulatory to say, no, I don't just want to have
Right.
10 customers paying me $1 million a year to do this.
Everybody
I'd
benefits
like
from
to
it. Right.
see
Right. Right.
all of everybody benefit from this.
Yep.
So, and of course, we got to make enough money to, eat and stay alive and grow. So it's not like we're going to do it for free, but it's
Yeah.
just the idea of getting it out there, customer acquisition, the idea of getting more and more success stories faster justifies the idea that I don't
Mm-hmm.
care if it's slightly more valuable or people are willing to pay way more money for it. It's the idea
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's accessible now. Let's make it accessible.
I think about this
Is a
topic a
tipping point.
lot in reference to things in my personal life that are just no brainers. That I can see tech, and including tech like the stuff that we're talking about, getting to the point where it has such value and it's such a core part of everything that I do that when the bill comes, you're like, well, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, of course. Like it's a literal no brainer. I'm getting the value that I want from it. It costs this. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Good, great. Don't have to think about it. And I think obviously there's a little bit of a pricing specialists and people who are more knowledgeable in this area than I am probably scoffing and giggling, but there is this sweet spot in my personal life, and I imagine that it's not a lot different for organizations who want to get the value that they need out of a solution, and they want to do it in a way that is completely reasonable and acceptable from a pricing point of view. That that segues to the final thing I had, which is this quote from CIO Online that was saying, this is actually from last year, and it's from the earlier part of last year. 94% say of respondents to CIO Online say that they're overspending in the cloud. In other words, people are responding to a survey say in the extreme majority, 94%, know that they're overpaying in the cloud, and they're still doing it. So when when you find yourself in this position, you're a CIO of a big organization, for example, and your bill comes every year, or in the case of the cloud, probably monthly, or maybe quarterly. You just, is it just one of these things? Well, you've got it's a pill you got to swallow. It's well, of course I have to do this. I'm putting my stuff in the cloud. I've got to pay this bill, and I know that I'm paying more than I should. But what else am I going to do? Right? It's the right, and I've been told that this is the right thing to do. This is the right place to put things, and so I think when we talk about the value of what we do, and whether the pricing habits that we've developed as an industry over the last 30 or 40 years still work anymore, I think it also has to be viewed in the lens of what CIOs are saying, and what they know about themselves to be true. That yeah, they know that they're probably spending too much in the cloud, but what are you going to do? It's just sort of it's, you got to have your stuff in the cloud, don't you? So
Well, yeah,
right,
so there's been a lot of tech hype cycles, and
right,
obviously we're in an AI hype cycle. However, the difference between the AI hype cycle and the cloud
mm-hmm.
hype cycle that started about, let's say, 10 or 15 years ago is that, like, AI has proven already that it can actually, replace
Yeah,
human thinking
yeah,
and mundane tasks trivially. So things that would be expensive and slow to have people do are now obviously trivially easy and fast for computers to do. Whereas cloud assumed, as we thought about it 15 years ago,
yeah,
it sadly assumed things would be static. It assumed that, like, we wouldn't need faster storage. We wouldn't need more storage. We wouldn't need
right,
faster compute. We wouldn't need more mobility. Uh, and what's interesting to me about technology itself, I am delighted by
Sure.
how accessible 10 gigabit
Yeah.
networking is to everybody right now. You can do it in your home. So for you to be scrubbing a video between your server and your desktop
Yeah.
is over a network is trivial. Like there's no lag, there's no buffering. It's just insane. It's amazing.
Yep.
If you move that workload to the cloud,
Yeah.
it's dead. Okay, so you can't move that workload. And then I think back to a bunch of our customers who move stuff into cheaper
Yeah.
commodity. It's either their own private cloud or whatever,
Right.
and then they double click on a document and it takes a minute and a half to open, and that just to
No,
see that,
that's
oh,
not it
that's
either.
not the doc that I need, and then you double click on another document, and I'm looking at this going, we have PCI Express 5, these little drives right now
Right.
that can open up that file in 30
Yeah.
milliseconds, like faster than a human brain can compute.
Yeah.
It has that information retrieved and displayed. But for some reason, somebody thought, no, we don't like having hardware and people. We need to move it all to somebody else's place. And they forgot that there's going to be all sorts of amazing technology coming down the pipe that
Yeah.
makes it so that you kind of want this tech closer to you. You kind of want to be running it yourself because the speed advantages, the
Yeah.
processing power advantages of having it close to you is
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
I get it's
Right.
easier for IT. You know, you have less IT staff, you don't have the hardware. I get it,
Maybe.
it's easier.
Maybe.
Maybe it's even more secure.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's let's say
Yeah.
it is for sake of argument. So that has some value too. So it's not like it's a terrible value to go to the cloud, but to me, the whole performance issue is the biggest problem. I What I can get done with my local setup
Yeah,
is
you
so
know, as you
fantastic
and I
that I
have, this
never
isn't the
want to
first
give it
time
up.
we've talked a little bit about this topic, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to bring it up again today. Is and I'm sure it won't be the last time that we talk about it. But I was, over the holidays just racking my brain, trying to remember, as you say, let's say 15 years ago when cloud was first kind of becoming the sort of the on the hype around cloud was first becoming a thing, and absolutely, yeah, if you're not
Just the
doing
de
it, you're a
facto
complete
thing.
idiot.
You're
You're
gonna do it.
fired.
Yep.
This is absolutely what you have to do. And where I landed on, I was trying to remember what was the sales pitch that was really landing for people. What was the compelling argument that really really worked for people? And what I remembered and what I came up with in my head, and I don't know whether this was the same for you, was this argument that was made around uh, you know, well, we sell widgets. We're not in the business of IT, and the same like we're not in the business of IM. We're not in the business of this. So we're going to put all this stuff in the cloud, and we're going to find this company, this third party that's gonna solve all of our IT IM problems because we sell widgets or whatever. And I actually had years ago, I had a customer that was in food products, potatoes specifically. If you ate a potato in the states, if you ate a French fry in the states, there was like a 1 in 3 chance that it was one of their potatoes. And I remember the argument that they gave back to us about their choice to go with the cloud provider they went with and to go with the cloud at all. It was that we're in the potato business, we're not in the servers and IT business, and I guess what I'm asking, and I don't know whether this still lands for you. Is that still what people think? Is that still, it's like, well, I'm making ice cream cones. I don't want to be in the IT business. Or is it just, have people forgotten about all that and they've just moved on completely from that?
I hope that they moved on because I'm going to go as far as to
Right.
say that it's not an IT business that you're doing. You that there's some
Yeah.
core intellectual property that you have that people need access to, and that's your business. It's the idea of how quickly
Yeah.
can I get people to make the right decision within my business so that they're not
Right.
collaborating, so that they're not waiting over a weekend, so that they're not
Mm.
frustrated, is the business that everybody's in. So you want to identify how do I maximize speed, accuracy,
Yeah.
and effectiveness. That's it. It's not a matter of, oh,
Right.
well,
Right.
Google can buy a disk 10 times cheaper than I can, so therefore I'm going to
Right.
save 10x on IT.
Right.
That's kind of never happened. So the question should always be, are my people more effective because I did X? If so, X was great. And if my people are exactly
Or
the same
worse.
efficacy or
Yeah.
slightly worse because
Yeah,
I did X,
yeah, and
then
I
it's
think that that's
worse.
really on the
Period.
nose for it. I mean, look, and you and I, with this incredibly impactful session here, aren't going to turn the tide of cloud spending or anything. I just think it is an interesting topic to start to think about, where in an age where increasingly every dollar is scrutinized. If you've got CIOs reporting self-selecting in surveys that they know, to the tune of 94% of them know that they're overspending, and you're looking for ways to start changing that or turning the tide, then one of the things that they may start to look at is, was this ultimately the right path for us, or was it the right path for us for everything? Maybe there are things, maybe there are some things that we need to bring back home, some workflows and processes that we need to bring back internally, because we're spending a ton, and we have potentially this kind of negative user experience of kind of poor performance, poor access, whatever it happens to be, right? So, yeah,
Yeah, so it's I like it, and I think maybe we came full circle back to the whole,
right,
are you closer to LeBron? Are you closer to Brian? Or are you closer to the high schooler?
yeah,
Because and it comes down to how you measure it. It's like, to be closer to LeBron, that
right,
means people have instantaneous access to accurate information so that they don't have to collaborate. They don't have to
right,
ask somebody. They don't have to go seek and find or recreate information. So that's the pinnacle. That's the LeBron James of information management,
right.
is people don't even think, they don't even love it or hate it. They don't even think about it. They just have access to that information that they need. And they don't mind the way that they do it. So what are you doing to achieve that? That's the LeBron James. And I would go as far as to say the
Yeah,
Brian Scalabrine is closer to that as well, is that all of the systems that we put in place are in support of people finding the right information that they need accurately and confirming it very quickly so that they don't have to collaborate, they don't have to hunt, or they don't have to recreate. And then the high schooler
too far
level
away.
is,
Right,
I like to do
right,
sky hooks, so
right.
I practice nothing but sky
Eh,
hooks. This is what I feel like doing,
yeah,
and cloud might be kind of like practicing sky hooks, something that I know how to
yeah. And
do,
I'm
I
I'm
can
I'm
do it, so therefore that's
22%
going to be my
from
priority.
the 3 point line. But when it works, it looks awesome. But most of the time I miss those shots, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. What I love to bring it back to the
Mm-hmm.
LeBron analogy is that you think about the top of any sport, the top of any discipline like that. How much those folks make everybody around them better, right? So whoever plays with LeBron, whoever plays with Sidney Crosby, whoever plays with the greatest Messi and incredible sports figures, it levels people up around them. And so that's as well what I think when we think about how do we help people go from being statistically the worst NBA basketball player ever, but still probably pretty good. Well, you can surround them with the right people to help them elevate their game. People improve by being with better and stronger teammates. And the tools that are part of that. The tools that you bring to it are part of that for sure. So I'm going to be disappointed if every one of these conversations don't lead with some kind of sports analogy now, because I think that's a great starting point. Yeah,
I think
we
we
don't do
will
that.
have to be careful to make sure we don't do sports ball the whole
Yeah,
time. Uh, Chess is
yeah. Maybe
okay;
maybe
it's
for
a
the next
game,
one we
but
can
it's
deliberately find something
yeah,
not
it's
not sportsy.
accessible
Movies.
and
We talk
entertaining.
about movies or TV shows the next time. No, no end of those. Yeah, yeah. Very good.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, good chat.
Love it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. You bet. That was great.
yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
Jason.
Davey. We'll see you again next week.
Enterprise Intelligence is a Shiny Docs podcast with Jason Cassidy and Davey Slimmon, produced by Stephen Schunz. Copyright 2024. If you would like to learn more about how Shiny Docs can make it easy to organize your content, protect your data, and make your users happy, visit shinydocs.com today.